Lisa was an old widow, and the love she had for her late husband Ben never faded. She loved him so much that even after his death she couldn't let go. For years she wore mourning clothes, always reminded of the beautiful moments they shared. Lisa lived alone in the grand mansion that had once been filled with laughter and love. Now it felt empty. Her heart ached every day, and she refused to mingle with anyone. The pain of losing him was too much for her to bear, and so she chose to stay away from others. Every day, Lisa would walk around the mansion, her eyes fixed on the photo of Ben Newport. His picture was everywhere in the house, on the walls, the tables, even beside her bed. The picture was always with her, as if he was still with her in spirit. She spent hours sitting by herself, staring at the picture and remembering the good times they shared. She could almost hear his voice calling her name, and for a brief moment, she felt like he was still there. At night, when the house was dark and silent, Lisa would lie in bed, the photo of her late husband resting beside her. She couldn't sleep without it. Even when her eyelids grew heavy, she would stare at the picture, talking to it softly as if Ben was still listening. She told him about her day, her struggles, her small victories. She shared her feelings, just as she used to do when he was alive. She would laugh softly and cry sometimes, as though he was right there beside her, offering comfort with his warm words. Lisa refused to believe that Ben was really gone. To her, he was still very much alive, living within the walls of their home, inside the photo. No one could understand how deeply she missed him. Her friends, who tried to visit her once in a while, couldn't get through to her. She kept herself away from them, not wanting to face a world without her husband. Her daily routine was simple but filled with memories of him. When she woke up, she would look at his picture before anything else, as though saying good morning to him. As the days passed, she became more and more absorbed in her grief. She didn't want to let go of the love they had shared. Lisa believed that if she could keep talking to the picture, if she could keep sharing her thoughts with him, Ben would always be there with her. And in the stillness of the night, as everyone else slept, Lisa would talk to her husband's picture, her one true companion in a world that no longer felt like home. She never expected anyone to understand. This was her way of holding on to the love she had lost. It gave her comfort, even though it also isolated her from the world outside. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Lisa continued her nightly ritual. For her, it wasn't just a photo on the wall. It was a lifeline to the past, a connection to the love she would never forget. And so she lived in the mansion that echoed with memories, forever tied to the man she had loved so deeply. The world moved on around her, but for Lisa, time seemed to stand still. She stayed in the house, alone with the picture, never doubting for a moment that Ben was still listening, still with her in spirit. One day, Lisa's friends gathered together and decided it was time to visit her. They hadn't seen her in a long time, and they were all deeply concerned. They had tried to visit before, but each time, Lisa had pushed them away. This time, they made it clear that they could no longer stay silent about what they saw happening to her. When they arrived at Lisa's mansion, they didn't hold back. "Lisa, we are so worried about you," one of them said, her voice filled with emotion. "Why did you abandon us? Ever since your husband passed away, you've stopped asking after us. You've shut us out completely. We're not happy about this, Lisa. You can't just live in mourning forever." Another friend, her face full of concern, continued, "Why are you still wearing those mourning clothes? It's been years. And what is with all the pictures of your husband? It's like you haven't let go of him at all. Lisa, you have no children with him, and you're getting older. If you keep living this way, you'll waste your whole life away. Don't you want to enjoy what little time you have left? You need to move on, Lisa." One of the friends spoke more directly now. "Don't you want to live again? Get yourself out of this sadness. There are young men out there, people who can bring joy back into your life. You don't need to stay stuck in the past like this. You can still find happiness, Lisa. You're killing yourself with this mourning. Is that what you want? To die and be with him forever?" Their words stung Lisa, and she felt her heart heavy with their concern. But they were right. She had stopped checking on them, and she hadn't made any effort to move on with her life. Lisa had been so wrapped up in her memories and her grief, she hadn't seen how much time had passed. Her friend's words cut through her sorrow, and they made her realize how much she had closed herself off from the world. They were right, she needed to live again. Lisa's friends didn't stay long. They said their goodbyes, leaving her alone to think about everything they had said. They wanted her to understand, but they also wanted her to make the choice for herself. As they left the mansion, Lisa was left in the silence of her home, surrounded by memories of Ben and her years of mourning. But now, for the first time in a long time, she began to truly think about what her friends had said. She sat alone in the dim light of the room, looking at the pictures of her late husband that covered the walls. She thought about all the years she had spent grieving, talking to his photo, and refusing to move forward. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that perhaps her friends were right. She had spent so much time holding on to the past that she had forgotten about the future. She had forgotten about the chance to live her remaining years in peace and happiness. Lisa stood up slowly, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision she was about to make. She walked to the wardrobe, where her mourning clothes were stored. For so long, they had been a part of her identity, something she had clung to, believing that by wearing them, she was honoring her late husband. But now it felt as though they were a chain that kept her bound to a past that no longer existed. With trembling hands, she took out the mourning clothes. She held them in her arms, looking at them one last time. They had served their purpose, but now they were only reminders of a life she could never get back. Lisa knew in her heart that it was time to let go. Slowly, she carried the mourning clothes outside to the garden and set them on fire. As the flames consumed the fabric, Lisa felt a strange sense of freedom wash over her. She was no longer bound by the past. She was free to live again. "I will not tie myself to the past anymore," Lisa whispered to herself. "I will move forward. I will honor my husband in my heart, but I will also live my life." With that, she turned her back on the fire and walked back into the house. It was the beginning of a new chapter for Lisa. A chapter where she would no longer live in mourning, but would seek joy in the small things, and perhaps in new friendships and love. Lisa knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be moments when the memories of Ben would overwhelm her, but she had made a promise to herself that she would no longer allow grief to rule her life. She would cherish the memories, but she would no longer be trapped by them. The world was still out there, full of new possibilities. For the first time in a long time, Lisa felt a spark of hope in her heart. She wasn't sure what the future would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to embrace it, to step out of the shadows and live again. The journey ahead was unknown, but it was hers to take. One day, Lisa decided to take a walk to the beach to enjoy the calming sound of the waves and the fresh air. As she sat down on the sand, watching the waves crash against the shore, she felt a sense of peace that she hadn't experienced in years. The warm sun on her skin and the beauty of nature helped her feel more alive and hopeful. Suddenly, a young man approached and sat beside her. He smiled and introduced himself, saying, "Hello, I'm Peter. I'm an engineer. I've been watching you for a while, and I must say you're very beautiful. In fact, I've been looking for a woman of your age, someone who would love me." Lisa blushed, unsure of how to respond. "Are you serious? I'm an old woman, a widow. I don't want any man who will come into my life and hurt me," she said, trying to push him away gently. But Peter, with a charming smile, insisted, "I'm very serious. I don't care about your age. I care about you. I want to marry you." Lisa was taken aback by his boldness. A young, handsome man like Peter wanting to marry her seemed too good to be true. But his words were so convincing, and he seemed so sincere that Lisa found herself beginning to believe him. She allowed him into her life, not knowing that Peter had dark intentions hidden beneath his sweet words. In his mind, he saw Lisa's wealth and thought, "This woman is rich. If I play my cards right, I can inherit everything she has." Peter convinced Lisa that his love for her was real, and they began planning for their wedding. The two seemed perfect together, laughing, sharing jokes, and enjoying each other's company. But all the while, Peter was quietly assessing Lisa's wealth and property. He knew that she had no children and that all her assets were in her name. He began to plot how he could inherit everything. As their wedding day grew closer, Lisa fell deeply in love with Peter. She trusted him completely, and in a moment of love and generosity, she decided to will all her properties to him. She wanted him to have everything, believing that he would be the one to carry on her legacy and care for her. Peter, seeing that everything was set in his favor, came up with a plan to take full control of Lisa's wealth. He convinced her to go on a boat cruise with him, saying it would be a fun and romantic way to celebrate their love. Lisa agreed, excited for the adventure. While they were cruising on the water, enjoying the beautiful scenery, Peter turned to Lisa with a sinister look in his eyes. In a sudden, unexpected move, he pushed her into the river. Lisa screamed in terror and begged him to stop, but Peter coldly ignored her pleas. "I'm sorry, Lisa, but I needed to do this to inherit your wealth," he said as she tumbled into the water. But fate had other plans. A young, poor fisherman who had been passing by saw what happened. Without hesitation, he jumped into the water and swam to Lisa. He managed to pull her to safety, saving her life. Peter, unaware of what had occurred, went back to Lisa's house, believing his plan had worked. He began celebrating, imagining that he would soon enjoy the life he had stolen. However, Lisa was not defeated. Once she had recovered, she called the police and told them everything. They arrested Peter for attempting to murder her and for his fraudulent actions. All the properties that Lisa had willed to him were returned to her, and she was safe once again. Grateful for the fisherman who had saved her life, Lisa decided to reward him generously. She gave him a large sum of money to help him start his own business and build a better future. She didn't want him to be trapped in poverty any longer. As for Lisa, she chose to live the rest of her life peacefully and happily. She didn't want any man in her life again. She enjoyed the wealth she had inherited from her late husband, but more importantly, she found happiness in her own company. She had learned that it was better to be alone than to trust someone with bad intentions. And so, Lisa lived the rest of her life with the wisdom she had gained from her experience. She was no longer a widow mourning her past. She was a woman who had found strength in herself and had learned to trust her instincts. She enjoyed her freedom and lived without regret, knowing that she had made the right choice. Moral lessons. 1. Trust your instincts. Sometimes the best way to protect yourself is by trusting your gut feelings. Lisa's initial hesitation with Peter was a sign that something wasn't quite right. 2. Never let greed control you. Peter's greed led him to betray Lisa, but it was his actions that ultimately brought him down. Greed will never bring true happiness. 3. You are stronger than you think. Lisa's ability to overcome the betrayal and start anew shows that we all have strength within us, even when we face difficult situations. 4. True love is about respect, not material gain. Lisa's willingness to love Peter was genuine, but Peter's love was only about what he could gain from her. Real love is based on respect, trust, and mutual care. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please consider subscribing to my channel for more stories like this. Your support means the world to me, and I promise to keep bringing you more content that is both engaging and thought-provoking. Stay tuned and take care.